corners, did they? They just went from A to B with no messing. And this is actually part of North Watling Street. Now, Watling Street is a huge Roman road that runs right across England from London up to the northwest, and everywhere you go there's little bits of it dotted about, and this is a bit of North Watling Street we've just been travelling along. Now, as you come back into Handbridge, can you see the Westminster architecture? Look at the crisscross brickwork on the buildings on either side. And ahead of us, you've even got some barley sugar twist chimneys as well. And this is because when the workers retired from service to the Dukes, instead of abandoning them, he'd buy them or give them a house in Handbridge here. And he'd look after them throughout the whole of their retirement. So nobody was abandoned. So a very, very good person to work for. So we're now dropping down through the older part of Handbridge. Still got a villagey feel to it, even though it is just separated from Chester by the river. And we've got some of the older shops coming up on the right. And on the left-hand side, well, we'll go there in a minute. There's a park just coming up on the left. And this park is very special because in there is a Roman stone shrine to the goddess Minerva, a 2,000-year-old shrine. Now, if you look over on the left now, just beyond the swings, can you see what looks like a rocky cave? And then there's a rectangular structure just on the side there. That is 2,000 years old. Now, most Roman shrines are in museums, but this one is still where the Romans placed it, and they put it there because that was a sandstone quarry. So it was their way of thanking the gods for providing the raw materials that they needed to build their fortress with. Now, here's the old 15th century bridge now. Look at the beautiful views on both sides of the riverside. Shame the sun's not shining. Now, on the right, you can see the line where the weir goes. The water's very high at the moment. The tide's high. There's usually a weir there. There were flour mills once upon a time on the left-hand side of the bridge. But on the right, again, you can see the boats that take you on half-hour trips along the river, the bandstand, the ice cream kiosks, and the little footbridge. And this is the bridge gate, another one of those 4 main gateways. And this building on the left, the black and white building, you can see the date in the beam, 1664. The Earl of Shrewsbury guarded the bridge gate, and his job was to collect the toll money from anybody who wanted to come across from Wales and into the city of Chester for trading. They could come in as long as they paid for the privilege. And the next black and white building on the left now, Ye Old King's Head Pub. There's Charles I on the sign with his little pointy beard. Now, Ye Old King's Head, that's usually named after Charles I. He was the only English monarch to be beheaded at the end of the English Civil War. That happened in 1649. Now, ahead of us, you can see up to the city centre again. And we're very famous for our shops on 2 levels, the rows. I'll tell you a bit more about those in a minute. But first of all, can you see this church immediately ahead of us on the right? There's 2 unusual features about this church. Number 1, there's a public footpath that goes underneath the tower and up into the rows shops, the shops on 2 levels. And number 2 is, you can see where the clock should be facing this way, and the clock is missing. Now, the English and the Welsh have had a lot of conflict over the years. Wherever you get a border, you get border conflict. And the story says that that clock was removed at one time when the English and the Welsh weren't very friendly with each other. And the reason was that it faces Wales, and we didn't want to give the Welsh the time of day. Don't you think it's time they put it back? Apparently it's true, but there you go. On the left, you've got the back of the Grosvenor shopping centre. The front entrance to that is near the East Gate clock. I'll point that out shortly for when you're walking around in your free time. And this is Pepper Street we're travelling along, where they used to trade all the herbs and spices at one time. And we're going underneath the city walls again. Can you see the original gateway to the left? Far too small for today's traffic, so this big gateway was built to accommodate the lorries and the coaches. And on the right now, 2,000 years old, that's our Roman amphitheatre. A big hole in the ground, it's just the foundations to the left. But this would have been a huge Roman amphitheatre full of gladiator fights, taller than any building we see around us today, and big enough to take up to 12,000 spectators. It's only a third excavated. The rest of it lies underneath a Grade 2 listed building. So there's lots of heated debate about whether or not we can expose the rest of it. On the right now, St John's Church is the oldest church in the city. That's always open if you want to go in there. There's usually teas and coffees, and if you find the vicar in, it's wonderful. His name, genuinely, is Reverend Chester's. That's his real name. What a name. He's in the right place. There's the Grosvenor Park on the right. Beautiful parkland that goes all the way down to the riverside. Grosvenor, yes, the family gave the parkland to the city, and at the same time they also gave £50 a year to Chester. That was to pay for a park keeper, because in Victorian times they only earned £1 a week, and 2 weeks of course were unpaid leave, so the £50 paid for a park keeper. But now I believe that Chester still gets £50 a year from the Grosvenor estates, but I don't think it pays for much more than a couple of rose bushes. Now the last of the 4 main gateways is up on the left. When we get to the top here, look up to the left. It is pedestrianised. You can look at it closer on foot later. But look up to the left in the distance, you'll see an archway and the famous clock on top. Can you see the clock with the green roof on top of the archway? That is the East Gate clock, said to be the 2nd most photographed clock in the country, after Big Ben, of course, down in London. So the Eastgate clock then, as I say, you need a photograph of that. It is said to be the 2nd most photographed clock, and it was put up in 1897. Now 1897 was the Diamond Jubilee of Queen Victoria. So after 60 years as our Queen, that was our memorial to her. Now we put it on the Eastgate clock because if you go right back as far as Roman times, when the Romans built their huge fortress here, the fortress of Diva, named after the River Dee, Diva Castra. Castra meant camp, and Castra became Castra, Kestra, Sestra, and eventually Chester. So Diva Camp, or Chester. They had 4 main gateways in the fortress, but the easternmost gateway, the East Gate, was the most important of the 4, because if the soldiers marched out of the eastern side of the gateway, they could then reach the rest of the country, going either north up to York or south down to London. So it was always the main entrance then, and it still is the main shopping street to this day. Now I want to show you one more little area before I take you back up to the dropping off point and let you have a bit of free time to explore the city centre by yourselves. And the last area I want to show you is called Bourton. Now Bourton is very much a suburb of Chester today. As we make our way here, you can see all the shops and businesses are stretching all the way along this road, linking Chester with Bourton. So the Greenbelt laws didn't work here. And Bourton, it used to be a very, very separate area from Chester though. As far back as the Eastgate clock and as far ahead as we can see, it was just open fields and countryside. There was nothing. So